Hi, Madison.
Hey, Asha. I told you I was going to join to learn, so I'm definitely going to learn today.
Thanks for being here.
Anytime, anytime. Questions.
I
Mm,
hope I sent the right link out to people because I would think that there would be more people in the chat. And there's not a lot of people. I mean, there's
mm. We sent it out through Google Pathway?
to 36
Oh,
people. And I accidentally
oh.
CC'd myself. So every time it's sent to someone, it also came to my inbox.
Mm. Mm, 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 mm. I wonder, like, it has suggestions. Should we request these people to join?
Maybe.
I do it. I do it.
Do y'all
Quest.
see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's more people getting requested. Hmm. Mhm. I wonder, let me see if it's posted on Instagram. Oh, did you only want to limit it to people who RSVP?
Uh-uh.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I'll put it on Instagram.
Like I sent it out to the RSVPs. Like I sent the link out to the, probably should have sent it to everybody who viewed it.
Yeah. We can still do it. You want to do it? Send it out to everybody? You got your message? We just send it out again.
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
Then all of you is just like counselors, right? Like you I'll keep on. Okay.
Looks like a staff presentation for now.
Yeah.
They will show up. It's just noon. You already sent the message, right? This morning. I got it.
Should I send, I only sent it to the reservation. Should I send it to the student views real quick?
You can, sure.
Okay, that's sent.
Got it.
Perfect. Hello to everyone who has joined us and is in the room. Welcome to University Career Services Workshop Wednesdays. Today is all about imposter syndrome and career readiness. And as we get ready to begin, if you could just check in by scanning the QR code that is on your screen, we would really appreciate it. So just use the access code COOG after you follow the link, and it's going to pop up asking for an access code, and you'll enter COOG. And that's all we need from you. Just please scan the QR code to check in. We're just going to wait a few more minutes to let others join, and then we will get started. Hi there, welcome to everyone who's joining the room. As we get prepared to get going today, please scan the QR code on the screen to check into the workshop and use the access code COOG. We're going to get started in just a minute. Thank you all for your patience. All right, so let's get going. My name is Asha. I am a career development specialist with University Career Services, and I will be presenting to you guys today about imposter syndrome and career readiness. All right, so today we have a lot to cover. We are going to talk about what imposter syndrome is and what imposter syndrome feels like. We're going to talk about the causes of imposter syndrome and the types of imposter syndrome. We'll talk about the differences between imposter syndrome and humility, and then how imposter syndrome affects our career readiness. We're going to talk about how to work through imposter syndrome, and then we're going to close out for questions. So, learning objectives. I want you guys to have this on the top of your mind so you know what you need to be focusing on. Today, my hope is that you come away understanding the phenomenon of imposter syndrome. I will have done my job if you're able to identify signs of imposter syndrome, if you become familiar with how career readiness is impacted by imposter syndrome, and hopefully you'll be able to identify at least 3 coping strategies for how to get through imposter syndrome. So first I want to talk about how common imposter syndrome is. Around 25 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from imposter syndrome. So people walk around, looking successful and perfect and everything, but little do people know that they're dealing with imposter syndrome. 70% of adults may experience imposter syndrome at least once in their lives. And 75% of professionals have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their careers. So it appears to be more common when people are going through transitions and trying new things and, going through different changes and stuff like that. So imposter syndrome is very common. It needs to be normalized because it's something that really anybody can experience. So there's no shame in experiencing imposter syndrome. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about imposter syndrome? Why is it so important to learn about and to understand? Well, that's because imposter syndrome can stifle the potential for growth and meaning by preventing people from pursuing new opportunities for growth at work, in relationship, or centering around their hobbies. So we want to confront imposter syndrome because that can help us continue to grow and thrive. So what is this imposter syndrome? Well, first, it's a cognitive distortion, and that's a type of thinking pattern that emphasizes negative biases. So, something that would be a really good follow-up for you today is to go and research cognitive distortion, so you can learn about the different ways that our brain convinces us to think. Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon. It's not a diagnosis or anything that would be in the DSM. It's just a phenomenon that entails experiencing feelings of self-doubt, incompetence, and fear of being unmasked as a fraud, even with evidence of your competence and achievements. So imposter syndrome can surface in so many areas of our life. It can impact our work, our personal growth, our relationships, our friendships, our professional development, career readiness. It can affect the fulfillment we experience with our hobbies, as well as our academic growth and performance. Imposter syndrome stems from a sense of inadequacy despite a person being objectively competent. So that's not subjective. Subjective is opinion, it's feeling, different things like that. Objective means it's observable, it's something that has been demonstrated, it is a fact. And even though someone experiences or there is the fact that they are a competent person, they don't believe that. So this causes people to doubt their skills and accomplishments and doubt other people's high regard for them. So when other people have opinions about them and respect them and hold them in high esteem, people with imposter syndrome don't believe in what they're hearing and experiencing from others. It causes people to doubt their own history and their own track record. So, you might have had a list of achievements, but none of that matters because of imposter syndrome. It holds us back from the self-confidence we've earned and that we deserve to feel. And imposter syndrome is the fear that any mistake made will reveal to others that we aren't good enough or smart enough for our job, our position, or whatever it is that we're experiencing. And people who struggle with imposter syndrome believe that they're undeserving of their achievements and the high esteem in which they are, in fact, generally held. So it's just kind of like walking around with lies all jumbled up in your brain. Am I lying? Were they lying? Like, who's telling me the truth? It's a big tangled mess. So what does imposter syndrome feel like? So it feels like self-doubt. It feels like feelings of inadequacy. It feels like undervaluing your own contributions and attributing your success to external factors like luck and chance and somebody else's help. Um, Imposter syndrome feels like self-sabotaging your success. It's something we are, when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you're compelled to do. And that self-sabotage is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, Imposter syndrome makes us set unrealistic expectations that we can't meet, which then creates a confirmation bias that, oh, well, I'm right about this. Um, it's continuous fear of not living up to expectations. It leads to burnout. And imposter syndrome is feelings of inadequacy, incompetence, and unintelligence. It's feeling like all those things are true, feeling like you don't belong, berating your performance. People with imposter syndrome overachieve. They feel immense pressure internally and externally. And then one thing that's really sad about imposter syndrome is that people experiencing it have the inability to internalize the experience of success. So that means really feeling that success, really owning it as your own, and attributing it to your own competence. So being unable to internalize the experience of success is really robbing us of fulfillment. So it's feeling overestimated by others and feeling like, people are expecting too much of you and think too much of you or think too well of you. People with imposter syndrome receive compliments, but then they believe those compliments to be disingenuous or just a result of people's politeness. So you disregard your personal strengths, which limits your potential and denies your success. So it really hinders that sense of fulfillment we get from everything that we do. And imposter syndrome feels like anxiety, just constant anxiety from wondering when your inadequacy and fraudulence will come to light. And it also entails avoidance of challenges and opportunities that would let us grow and shine. So as I'm mentioning these things of what imposter syndrome is and what it feels like, if this is resonating with you, if these are feelings that are familiar or common in your experience, you may be experiencing imposter syndrome. And it's important to identify that so that you can work on coping strategies to move through it. So what are the causes of imposter syndrome? It's really important to know that because then that helps you identify some root core beliefs you have about yourself, and also helps you identify your triggers. So, some causes of imposter syndrome are family environment and upbringing. So this might be having caregivers who put emphasis on achievement, but were also very critical at the same time. There's also social pressures. So this might be being a part of a group where approval or worth seems to be explicitly connected to achievement. So those are areas where there's lots of competition and lots of prestige and high regard and things like that. So those social pressures can fuel imposter syndrome. Sense of belonging or the lack thereof. So fear of being rejected is something that fuels imposter syndrome, but also any circumstance, even in the past, that made a person feel different or excluded from a group can fuel imposter syndrome. So if you have experienced that in your past, that could help you understand why you might be feeling like a fraud or feeling, like an imposter, feeling like you don't belong. Also, personality is a big factor. So different personality baselines, different personality types, our archetypes, a lot of different personality archetypes are linked to, or more linked, or make someone more prone to internalizing feelings of pressure and doubt and failure. So these are people who suffer from low self-efficacy, low self-worth, people who deal with perfectionism, and even neuroticism, which is one of the big 5 traits from some of the different personality archetypes that have been researched about. So if any of that sounds like something that might be a part of your personality, then you would need to watch out for imposter syndrome. So new work or school opportunities are some other causes for imposter syndrome. Entering a new role can trigger it because of the self-doubt that comes with trying new things, life transitions, feeling like you don't belong, or feeling like you're inadequate in a new role or a new setting. And then also social anxiety. Imposter syndrome and social anxiety may overlap sometimes, and they may look like one another. And so social anxiety may make you more prone to dealing with imposter syndrome. Okay, so what are the types of imposter syndrome? It's really important to understand these because you might be able to narrow down your type so that you can really focus on those specific challenges to that type. So there are 7 types: the perfectionist, the super person, the natural genius, the soloist, the expert, the noticer, and the discounter. So perfectionists, these types of imposters, they believe that unless you're absolutely perfect, um, that even when you're absolutely perfect, you still could have done better. These perfectionistic traits make you believe that you're not as good as others might think you are, and one day you're going to be found out. The super person believes that they must be the hardest worker or reach the highest levels of achievement possible. And if you don't do it, you're a failure or you're a fraud, you don't belong, you never deserve this, et cetera, et cetera. The natural genius feels like a fraud simply because they don't believe that they're naturally intelligent or competent. So they may be more sensitive if they don't get something right the first time around, or it takes them longer to master a skill, or they have to try again. These things can perpetuate that imposter feeling. So the soloist, this person feels like an imposter if they had to ask for help to reach a certain level of status, or they feel like they have to go at it alone, um, or that they can do it by themselves, or that they should be able to do it by themselves. And if they couldn't get to their achievement or their success on their own, it makes them feel like they have to question their competence or their abilities. So there's a shame in asking for help. Just like with the natural genius, there's shame in fearing failure. And the super person, they fear that free time takes away from their work or their personal fulfillment. The perfectionist fears losing control. The expert feels like an imposter because they don't know everything there is to know about a particular subject or topic. They feel like they haven't mastered every step in the process. And because there is more to learn, they don't feel as if they've reached the rank of expert. So these are people who feel like they need to know everything about everything, and that they don't know everything if they haven't read the entire textbook, or if they don't understand all the pieces or all the components, or have researched every topic within a subject. They feel unworthy, and that they undeserving. And the expert, they fear inadequacy. Then you have the noticer. This person can't be proud of their work or themselves because they immediately notice things that still aren't perfect, even after they achieve something. Or they may feel that something else about them discounts or or discredits or disqualifies them from receiving an award or recognition, or feeling complete. So this person is forgiving of others, but does not extend that same grace to themselves. This person is hyper aware of competition, real or imagined, and then secretly believes that they will always miss the bar. So this person fears not belonging. And then finally, you have the discounter. And this person automatically rationalizes away any evidence of their own competence, their achievement, or high regard. So they think to themselves, well, people think well of me because they really don't know what they're talking about, and they really don't know me. And this person struggles with trust. So their underlying emotion is fear of not being enough. So what if it's not imposter syndrome? What if this is just humility? Pause. People confuse imposter syndrome with humility all the time because people think that humility means thinking lowly of yourself and not being cocky and arrogant and things like that. And so, if I'm feeling like an imposter is normal and it's okay because I'm just being humble, right? No, that's not true. We have to find some balance. With humility, it's a sober and accurate assessment of your own capabilities. So understanding your capabilities, but accurately, and not, with that inflated sense of self. Whereas imposter syndrome is a skewed belief that you're not adequate or unworthy. So, you have to understand the difference between those two. They feel the same, but they're very different. So with humility, one has a modest view of their own importance. But with imposter syndrome, they feel that they're unimportant altogether and have nothing to contribute. So see, that's like, being modest versus just being below and beneath. Those are two different things. With imposter syndrome, you have the belief that you're below others and you're undeserving of a place at the table. But that's different from humility, because humility is just the belief that you are not superior to others. So with imposter syndrome, a person's ego, it might seem like, oh, well, I don't have a big ego. I feel like an imposter. But really, when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, your ego is actually turned and facing toward yourself, but only to self-deprecate. So you're thinking of yourself only in negative contexts. Whereas with humility, you're turning your ego away from yourself. So that can be tricky to recognize as well. With humility, we maintain our pride about who we are and our achievements and our worth, but we do it without arrogance. Or as you can kind of confuse that with imposter syndrome, you doubt and dismiss your success, achievements, and potential. There's a difference between doubting and dismissing and having a sense of pride at the same time. And then with imposter syndrome, there's self-deprecation, self-denigration, and self-abasement. This is very different from humility, which is simply self-confidence with a balance of self-awareness and just that modesty piece. So humility is not a lack of self-confidence or timidity. People get those confused as well. So you don't have to be timid, and you don't have to be have low self-confidence and low self-esteem to be humble. But those things are signs of imposter syndrome. And then with humility, we choose open-mindedness and curiosity. Whereas with imposter syndrome, we're actually closed-minded because we're protecting our negative point of view and fighting off any proof of the absence of that imposter syndrome or the absence of being an imposter. Does that make sense to everyone? If it doesn't, please raise your hand and I can kind of clarify around the differences between humility and imposter syndrome. It's really important that we understand these differences so that we're not walking around convincing ourselves that it's okay to feel so terrible about ourselves, thinking that it's humility, but really it's imposter syndrome. Okay, but could it be discrimination? Could you be experiencing imposter syndrome, or you think you're experiencing imposter syndrome, but what you're actually experiencing is discrimination? It's true that those two feelings or those two experiences can look the same, but they're very different because feeling like an outsider isn't always necessarily a direct result of imposter syndrome. And in some cases, it can occur due to actual discrimination or exclusion due to systemic biases. With imposter syndrome, the feeling of being an outsider is caused by your internal beliefs. It's all inside. But with discrimination, the feeling is caused by the outward actions of others, whether that be overt or covert. And then that discrimination, for those of you who have experienced discrimination or are in underserved populations, you might relate to this and know that discrimination causes people to develop a false sense of inferiority and unworthiness of their own identity, which is very different from imposter syndrome. Okay, so let's get to the career readiness component. Why is it so important to understand imposter syndrome when it comes to career readiness? Well, that's because career readiness, it takes us really being aware of ourselves and aware of our own values and interests and personality and skills and goals. And those things can get really cloudy and foggy when we're looking at them through the lens of imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome discourages both professional and personal movement forward due to the unproven belief of not being as smart as others. So this is going to really hold you back from taking steps forward because you don't believe you're capable. This also involves the inability to recognize your competencies. Therefore, you find it challenging to establish career goals and strategies to achieve them. So you're really in a holding pattern with your career goals when you're experiencing imposter syndrome. And it involves a sense of being unskilled for a particular role or lacking the ability to perform effectively, which can lead to you underestimating your capabilities. Then you avoid applying for jobs that you qualify for, or you settle for lower paying positions, all because you don't think that you have the skills and capabilities to do that job. And you really have to figure out, is that fact or fiction? So, more ways that imposter syndrome affects career readiness. As a job seeker, you may truly underestimate your abilities, and therefore you apply for jobs that you're overqualified for. You fear you won't meet the employer's expectations, which then limits your career opportunities and prevents you from reaching your full potential. So you do see how this is a roadblock, how it really stops you from moving forward and taking steps and doing the things that you need to do to achieve your career goals. Um, Imposter syndrome can have a negative impact on your performance during your job interviews and during network events because you're so convinced of your own frailties or your own incompetence, and things like that, that you have trouble answering interview questions, or you feel intimidated by the potential employers, or you avoid networking altogether. When you do these things, it really interrupts the formation of professional connections and building a professional network. And it also hinders your demonstration of your strengths to potential employers. Whenever you're applying for a job, you are selling and marketing yourself. You are telling them why you belong with this organization, why you can contribute to their team, why you're the best candidate for the position. But when you have imposter syndrome swirling in your head, you're unable to articulate any of that. And that's really going to hold you up in your career. Imposter syndrome can also contribute to increased stress and then burnout, because you constantly got this pressure coming from outside, well, perceived pressure from the outside, and you've also got this pressure you're putting on yourself on the inside. And this leads you to overworking or just really not enjoying what you're doing, which then lowers fulfillment and experience of happiness, increases that stress, and then burnout begins to build and fester. Okay, people who refuse to acknowledge their achievements and successes discredit their work performance. So then they worry about not being as capable as their colleagues. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and prevents you from seeking challenges on the job, seeking ways to, really contribute above and beyond, or it hinders your career advancement. And then this leads to unhappiness in your job because you're not going for what you really want because you don't believe that you're capable of it or even deserve it. And see how this really just limits your ability for professional development and growth. Like I mentioned before, the job search can be hindered by your low confidence and self-esteem. These qualities are really critical to job searching because they help you present yourself as qualified and confident and capable and the most qualified for the position that you are trying to achieve. And then I mentioned this before, but doubting your abilities may lead to difficulties in effectively marketing yourself and showcasing your skills and accomplishments. This is what you're articulating in your resume. This is what you're articulating in a cover letter. And you need to be able to look at that resume and cover letter with confidence and believe that it is communicating the full picture of who you are as a candidate. And if you're unable to synthesize that information, then you're not going to have an effective resume and cover letter. So how do we overcome this? How do we get through imposter syndrome? So first, it's important to seek out companies with supportive cultures. You want to find a company that is going to have supervision and professional development, and allow you to grow beyond imposter syndrome. So have supervision with someone who's really going to help you tap into your strengths and your capabilities. You also want to focus on expanding your expertise, developing your transferable skills, capitalizing on the strengths that you have to increase your employability and your opportunity to pursue the ideal job and career you deserve. But to do that, to expand on that expertise and those transferable skills, that doesn't mean that you give in to the feelings of imposter syndrome that compel you to go learn more and more and stay in school so you can learn as much as possible and feel like you're never able to know enough. Don't give in to that feeling. Follow the feeling that says, no, I need to make myself as competitive as possible. Those are two different perspectives. One is empowering and one is disempowering. Seek support from mentors and peers. This is why it's so important to find a mentor, and to develop relationships with peers, with people in student orgs maybe that are relevant to your major, relevant to your career goals. Colleagues at your internships. These are places where you're going to build these peer networks, where you're going to find people who qualify as a great mentor. And these are the people that you're going to seek support from, not arbitrary folks just out there willy-nilly. You also want to identify your personal brand. So this is going to help you really focus on your strengths and your skills and what you have to offer. Identifying your brand is going to help you identify how you want to be seen and perceived as a professional. And then you're going to end up following those steps to successfully contribute as you feel you should. And then to overcome imposter syndrome, you really need to tap into I call them your VIPs: values, interests, personality, skills, and goals. Tapping into your own values, what are those core values that you hold? What truly interests you? What are your personality traits and qualities? The things that people, love about you, the things that you love about yourself. And then what are those skills that you possess? What are the things that you're capable of, things that you've already demonstrated, things you've already achieved? And then how does all of that affect the goal that you are pursuing? These things help you focus more on facts and objective truth versus feelings. Some other ways to overcome imposter syndrome: identify and confront your triggers. Hopefully, from what we've discussed, you maybe can see and identify some things that could trigger imposter syndrome in you or a friend or a loved one. And it's important to confront those triggers, and then pause, reframe the thought, think through whether or not it's what you're feeling from that trigger is fact or fiction. Normalize your feeling, acknowledge it for what it is. It's imposter syndrome. That's common, like we mentioned before, and that's normal and it's okay. But now we need to move forward. Ask for help. Seek out the help of a therapist or a counselor. Here on campus, we have the Counseling and Psychological Services Center where you're able to go and get counseling, and they can specifically help you work on your imposter syndrome. Refrain from comparison. Someone told me comparison is the thief of joy. When you're constantly comparing yourself to that, to other people, that fuels those feelings of inadequacy and incompetence. Also, build trust in yourself. Really start to identify those ways that you can trust in your instincts, trust in what is inherently true about yourself, and trust in your ability to achieve and to meet your goals. Find and build community. A lot of times we don't have a community around us, a village around us. And so all we have are these thoughts that no one is challenging. So finding and building community is going to be an important piece. I'm going to go back real quick to the first, the first slide really quick. For those who missed it. Again, seeking out companies with supportive cultures, focusing on expanding your expertise, transferable skills, and strengths, seeking support from mentors and peers, identifying your personal brand, and tapping into your VIPs. Okay, so you also want to listen to the right voice. With imposter syndrome, you have so many voices in your head. But there's wisdom voice and there's fear voice. Fear wants to stop you. It's immobilizing. It confuses you. Whereas wisdom voice guides you. It brings you momentum. It provides clarity despite your circumstances. So is the voice you're listening to sabotaging you or supporting you? These are things that take time to explore within yourself. Assess the evidence and find the facts. So what's actually true about you and what's not? Something that is helpful to do is a 2-column list. 1, evidence that I am competent. List everything you've done, everything you've achieved, all the skills and qualities that you possess. And then on the other side, list all the reasons why none of that is true. At the end, look at the list about your incompetence. I bet it's going to end up being much more short in comparison to the evidence and the facts. And then you'll be able to challenge using that evidence and those facts and all the reasons why you are competent. You can use that to challenge what's in the other list about why you're incompetent. Okay, so reframe your thoughts around a growth mindset. There's growth versus fixed mindset. These are things that you can research later, but you need to embrace failure, because really we define what failure is, right? Just like we define what success is. So we learn from our missteps and we persist beyond it. And then get out of your head. Develop some tools to stop rumination, which is patterns of circling thoughts. These are tools that you use to stop rumination. It's how you get rid of that cognitive distortion. How I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, cognitive distortions, which are negative forms of thinking. And then practice self-compassion. And I know all of what I'm saying is easier said than done, but building our capacity for self-compassion is really what's going to carry us through. Don't beat yourself up. Give yourself credit for how far you've come. Tame that inner critical voice, which is your sabotage voice. That's your fear voice. Begin to isolate those voices and really challenge them, challenge what they're saying. And then keep failure in perspective, like how I said before. Instead of focusing on and being defined by your failures, take time to reframe failure as just a misstep along the learning process. So, I tripped over that crack. That's okay. I'm moving forward. Seek trusted feedback from your network. And this is why I mentioned before, it's important to build a community, because that community, that's where you're going to go practice periodically getting feedback from people you trust and respect. That meaningful feedback is different from critique and things like that. So meaningful feedback can help you correct and reframe your critical voice. And finally, you want to recalibrate your perspective. Ask yourself these questions and then use them to even journal, discuss with your friends. What core beliefs do I hold about myself? Those true core beliefs. Do I believe I am worthy of love as I am? Yes or no? And then why? And then, must I be perfect for others to approve of me? No, you don't. But you need to figure out where your belief on that lies and then why that's there so that you can begin to challenge whatever isn't true. Everything when it comes to your perspective and your thoughts and reframing, that isn't going to happen overnight. This takes practice. Just like you never realized it, that imposter syndrome took practice. You practiced those thoughts. Now you have to practice the opposite. Practice this self-awareness, practice getting beyond the thoughts. And like I said, challenging what your preconceived notions are and challenging your core beliefs about yourself and looking for fact and objective truth about yourself. So now I want to open the floor for questions. You can go ahead and raise your hand and I can call on you, or you can leave a question in the chat and I'll be able to look through, monitor the chat as well. But if you have any questions about imposter syndrome, what it is, what you're feeling, those are all great questions to ask. Maybe you're not sure if you have imposter syndrome. Maybe this is something that, a friend is experiencing. Ask questions so that we can help you get to the bottom of it. And then you can be of support to those who are in your community. Question time. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to mention was my own experience with imposter syndrome. I didn't realize that I had been living with imposter syndrome since I was a child. I had very achievement-oriented parents who were also very critical, and the bar was always moving. I never knew, like, is my best enough? Oh, it's not. Oh, wait, let me move the bar over here. Let me try and, meet expectations. Oh, that's not the expectation. Let me go over here. So I was constantly trying to achieve and gain approval and all these different things. And so my self-esteem was low, my self-worth was low, my self-confidence was low. And then it came to grad school where I'm surrounded by all these people who just have so many skills and strengths that they brought with them to the program. And I knew, here's my goal, here's what I want to do. But when it came to graduating, I didn't have the internship experience like most of my peers. And so I felt that disqualified me from a job. I felt that if I didn't have the experience, that means I didn't have any capability or any competence at all. I felt like my grad school experience was not enough at all to qualify me for the role that I wanted. And so I just didn't apply. I just could not apply for jobs. There was nothing that made me feel like I qualified for a basic position you could get with a bachelor's degree versus a master's. I didn't feel like I was able to demonstrate skills that you need to be competent. So for 2 years, I went unemployed, where and it was hard for me to take my licensure exam and really just feel like I was capable of doing that. And so I paused on my career journey. I didn't get anything done. I went nowhere. And then, like mentioned in this presentation, I started tapping into my community. I started tapping into the people that I trusted, and they kept challenging the thoughts that I had about myself. They kept encouraging me and telling me why I was capable of all these different things. And then I started to believe in myself a little bit more. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to apply to be a career counselor. And now here I am, trying my hardest to convince people to not take the route that I took, letting imposter syndrome hold me hostage. So, as a career development specialist, as University Career Services, we are here to support you with one-on-one appointments where you can come in and discuss your feelings of imposter syndrome, your experience of imposter syndrome, the different things that you're going through. We can help you sort through all that and untangle that. That's what we're here for. So please know that, I shared my story so that you would know that you're not alone, and so that maybe you identify with it, and maybe that'll encourage you to come and seek out support. So you can find my email address here on this slide, kawills20@central.uh.edu. Reach out to me. Let's schedule an appointment. Let's discuss your imposter syndrome, and let's get you feeling capable and certain about your ability to reach your fullest potential. Thank y'all so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you learned a lot. And before you head out, if you did not, when the presentation started, go ahead and scan this QR code and use the access code COOG so that we can document your attendance for today's presentation. Thank y'all again. I really enjoyed spending this past hour with y'all and just nerding out all about the psychological phenomena that is imposter syndrome. Ariba, you have a question.
Yes. Could you please go to the second overcoming imposter syndrome slide again, please? I just wanted to take a quick picture.
Wait. Oh, no,
Yeah,
this one.
Yes, that one. Thank you. This was a very helpful presentation, though. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad. Adrian, you have a question.
Yes. So my question is, does social media make imposter syndrome worse?
Yes. Because social media is full of our highlights. It's our highlight reel. And when you see people's highlights, you start comparing yourself to them, right? You start saying, oh, look at all the amazing things they're doing. Oh, I could never. Hopefully, our default setting is to celebrate those highlights and to be encouraged or inspired by those highlights. But oftentimes what happens, especially to millennials, is instead we decide that those highlights are a comparison to which we need to be identifying with. And that can lead to a spiral completely out of control. So it's important to recognize that on social media, people perceive one another to be perfect and to be overachievers and perfect. And that's just truly not the case. So I encourage you, as you're scrolling through social media and you get like an automatic instinctual thought that is based in imposter syndrome, to challenge it.
Thank you.
Bente, you have a question?
No, I don't. I just forgot to raise my hand.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have
Adrian, go
another
for it.
question.
Yeah.
Is there like a certain age that people more prone to get imposter syndrome?
It's not really age, it's more so contextual. Like it happens when it tends to happen more when you are transitioning to a new role or a new setting or a new life event. So children can experience imposter syndrome when going from elementary school to middle school, or when starting a new extracurricular. Adults can experience it when going to college or starting a new job. It really just depends on the context and situation and the type of imposter syndrome that you tend to experience.
Thank you.
Ariba,
Now I have a question.
go for it.
So on this page, it says like identify and confronting your triggers. Let's say you do that and you know what triggers you, and in the moment you recognize I'm being triggered and what I'm experiencing right now is imposter syndrome. What would you suggest doing in that moment to kind of retrain your thought process?
Yeah, so you would do what's called cognitive restructuring, where you look at your thought and then you look at the action that comes from that thought, and then you change the thought and then look at the action that comes from that new thought. So you can follow the thought all the way through and say, okay, if I'm not capable of this thing or this action or this role, what does that mean? What comes next? But then identify that thought and say, actually, I'm going to choose the opposite of that. What does that mean? And what comes next instead? So when you challenge your thought, you also end up challenging your actions. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You can also use coping mechanisms like pausing, breathing through the emotion that you're feeling from the trigger, thinking, challenging the thought that you feel, did I already mention taking deep breaths? And then moving forward with a different plan of action than what the imposter syndrome would have you do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? All right. Well, we are right at 1 o'clock and I want to respect y'all's time. So I want to go ahead and say thank y'all and wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank y'all so much. You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you.